Space wisely. So we have our space here as our presenter, and you're going to want to be able to use the locations of some of your different parts of your topics, right? Because space has memory. People talk about learning, like, you know, I walk into a room and go, what was I here for? And I can come back over here and say, oh yeah, that's what I wanted, and I can then come back and get it. That there's memory is attached to sometimes locations. It's what we call anchoring that you've learned about. So it can stabilize an idea or a concept by how we put something in a particular space. And it's a good way of sorting out different concepts. So, spatial anchoring is the first part.
Spatial anchor is it's a process of intentionally separating concepts, functions, and sequential variables with different locations.
All right, so could you give an example of that? If you were to get something that had 3 points to it.
Okay. All
So
right.
there's several ways. I will just show one way.
All right.
I'll
So-
get out of your way so you can have some space to
Yeah, okay. Let me start right here, because I'll go this direction. So, about a week ago, I went and hit some golf balls. 3 days ago, I was going to hit golf balls, but I didn't. Tomorrow, I'm going to go hit golf balls. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's three different
Yeah.
time
And
sequence.
I don't know if you noticed, but there were some of the 1 point, 2 point, 3 point in
Yeah.
that. The eyes looking down, silence while he's moving, which is different than talking while he's moving. Both can work depending on your
It
intent.
depends on what you're doing, right?
The last statement here, I'm going to, that was a credible gesture that
Right.
goes with that. So that was good, thank you. So those are 3 different topic locations now that he could come back and talk about the other day, 3 days ago, and tomorrow. Depending on the points of the topic. Sometimes you may move forward or back, so there's just what we call spatial marking on your floor.
Right. And if you get stuck behind a podium, you can do the same thing with gestures. It's okay. A week ago, I went and hit golf balls, and I'm going to look at it. So a week ago, as though a week ago is there, and I can see it, right? So a week ago, I went and hit golf balls, right? And then I'm coming back to 2 point. All right. 3 days ago, I was going to hit golf balls and didn't. So once again, I'm bracketing it off, okay?
And this is, as you
And then-
notice, is right there.
Right, and notice my fingers just curl. It's very natural. It's come, okay, tomorrow, I'm going to go hit golf balls. All right, so it's tomorrow, and I'm going to go hit golf balls. It's not going to be like it was before. There's going to be no mistake. It's going to happen. All right, so,
As you notice, his voice shifted slightly in each one of those, so while we're paying attention to one part of this, we can't not teach the other parts of it.
I didn't do it on purpose.
No, I know. So, spatial locations can also be used to keep a negative concept off your presenting space. So if this is our presenting space here, and let's say something happened culturally, there was a fire or a tragedy or something happened in the group that everyone knows about, or whatever it might be.
Okay,
Pink slips, yeah.
all right. 2 years ago, we lost to that team. Okay, that's not going to happen again. I can do it from here because you couldn't see my hand. Okay, so I'm going to
Okay, and
do it
actually
from this way.
go, yeah,
Okay,
put it over here.
well,
2 years ago.
okay, well,
Yeah,
all right.
and then you can go that way.
Okay, well, it's kind of stuck this way. Couldn't really. All right. Okay, so 2 years ago, we lost to that team. And then I'm going to hold my hand here, and I'm just going to move this way and say, that's not going to happen again. All right, so I'm just keeping it there, and then I'm curl my fingers back. So it's a negative thing, and then once I put it over here, I'm not going to come back over here unless there's something else attached to it. Okay, so I say, okay, all right. 2 years ago, we lost in the homecoming game. All right, that's not going to happen again. All right, so then I talk about something else, and I stabilize that over there. All right, now we know where it is. All right, so now for the last year and a half, we have really focused on every game that we've played. We haven't always. All right, so I can mark back out there that it's a negative thing. We haven't. All right, and we're going to from now on.
Correct.
So-
Yeah, it was good. So you get the sense of, even though it's still the same space, this now had that thing that happened a long time ago because you want to separate people from what was.
Because if I come back over here and I leave it there and I talk about it, I say, you know, we can do it, right? And I forget that that's been now contaminated because that was where we lost. And if I am not careful and I come back over here, remember, space has memory, and I go, okay, we can do it. What we can do is what that was. So once the space is contaminated with something negative, I'm not going to use it.
Other than for negative.
Right.
And sometimes another way you'll use this is if there's something that needs to be addressed or brought up before your presentation that the group knows about, it's best to address it and get it out of the way first. Sometimes you may do it before you even come into your presenting space.
Right. Okay. So, all right. So, I can introduce myself here. Let me start over here.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of room. Okay. So I can introduce myself, do the mantra, different ways of introduction, and before we begin. So this is my presenting place. But before, in other words, even though I've introduced myself, before we begin, suggest that we haven't started yet. So,
Yeah.
so I'm
There's those
here.
presuppositions.
We're
yes.
here. I said, before we begin, then
You need to talk about this bad thing.
there.
that happened.
Okay. Actually, I forgot what I was doing. Okay. Before I begin, all right. So I introduced myself. So now, before we begin, we all know that we've lost 40% of our scholarships this year. And that's a very disappointing statistic. I mean, that's something that we really never wanted to have happen. So what we're here to do is learn how to do the best we can with what we've got left, or with what we have. So I anticipate that it's a cultural negativity. And so I can bring it over here, set it here, and yes, this, okay? And then when we're talking stuff, because we don't want that to happen ever again. So I can gesture to it, but only for negativity.
Yeah.
Or something similar about the news.
And you may mark your stage out in your sort of centered presenting space. There may be a space where you tell stories, right?
It could be a place where you joke.
Yeah. And if I'm using, obviously we have to do this to keep on camera, but if I'm using a flip chart or PowerPoint, I will generally put it to this side of the room because I want my audience's right eye to more dominantly be seeing the facts and the figures here.
Because it goes more to the left brain
Left brain.
for familiar information.
If I'm going to be telling stories, I will move more towards Al's space and pull from the left eye coming across, more of the right hemisphere being ready for listening to the stories.
And it's a very different dynamic and different challenge where Marilyn and I train together. Because part of what you will be doing if you train alone, Marilyn does in the dual dynamic, instead of the dynamic duo, and other things I will automatically do. So they're covered together, and we're somewhat limited to running back and forth.
Right. So you won't see us
We've
moving.
been known to do it, but it's limiting.
Yeah, and you won't see us moving quite as much as if you had the whole stage when I teach by myself or when you do. There's a different marking out because we are more responsible for more things individually, right? So you want to know what are the concepts you want, where do you want your positive messages, the negative things you want to sort of have be off to the side. When you're giving information, when will you take questions?
Mhm.
Because that's also...
There's it's a very good one. Once you demonstrate the question space.
Okay, so if I'm talking and presenting and I see someone doing this and they're just sort of jumping up and down and I really don't want to take a lot of questions, I might just pause them for a moment while I finish my topic and then move over to here and say, actually I would probably move this way because I want more left brain. I don't want a bunch of stories in my question. So I'll say, you had your hand. I would like to acknowledge what that is about. And I will look at them and then I'll drop my hand, right? Because I'm not entertaining this interaction unless it's really necessary. Other times I'll be here and saying, are there any questions? I'm going to entertain the questions.
Well,
More things we'll teach you as we go along, but I just wanted to show you how these things will incorporate. You can't not do one without some of the others.
as a group dynamic, it's one of the things we'll talk about, I think, in the next module on how not to get shot, which is basically if you can predict something, you can set the parameters or the rules or the expectations before they come up. So we can say, okay, now we have a lot of material to cover, and so what we want to do is make sure that we take questions at a certain time, and we'll let you know when that is, okay?
Yeah,
So I can
he's
say,
just
okay,
marked it for
so
you.
I'm marking out where the question place will be, and at some point, I have to come over here and say, are there any questions up to this point? Right? So eventually I have to honor that, or I lose credibility.
Right, correct. I know we're giving you a lot, so just
I know.
read your manual and know that it starts to get more comfortable. And some of you may be very experienced at this, we're not sure, so we have to give you the details. Now, analog marking is similar to your spatial locations, except you're using your gestures.
Mhm.
And it's also used to identify or separate different elements or purposes or time, whatever that might be. And so again, it can be done with physical location, hand movements, and auditory variations, because your voice, we'll have a whole section again on using our voice that comes up in the next module.
So if you think of an analog as a difference or something different, so an analog marking can just be a staccato almost. It can be anything that is perceived. If they will hear it, it will be an analog mark.
So I may say, so today we have 3 really important topics. We're first going to speak about this, and then we're going to focus on this mostly, and then we do want to address that. So I've just given you 3 different locations with my gesture without moving off my teaching space, which for camera we have to do more of that because we don't have the luxury of space.
Right. So
Another one, you want to do your 1, 2, 3? Show the
yeah.
difference?
One of the things that's important. Okay. One of the things that's important, and one thing that we've seen people do that gets misinterpreted is they don't hold the finger up. They hold the finger like this. The perception can be we're scolding someone, we're selecting someone out, and in a sense it comes from being lazy. So instead of, okay, there's one thing we want to talk about, and it's like I'm pointing in this direction, whoever's sitting over there is getting marked out. It's almost like a scolding if you've ever experienced it. Why did I experience that in school? Okay, so if I want to say one thing or a point, there is a point I want to make. So a point, and I can hold it or I can curl it back. Either way, we're going to talk about 3 things today. We're going to talk about the other mind's eye. We're going to talk about the grief work that we've done, and we're going to talk about presentation skills. All right. So I can number them, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure they're specific unless they're linked. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3.
That marks it out.
Right.
We recommend not doing here because you're already in a 1 point, now you're talking to yourself.
Right.
So,
So I
well,
need to
first
do
we're gonna
this, I need to do this, I need to do that.
Right.
Is one, that's congruent, but say, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and that's not congruent because that's an internal dialogue location.
And it's also linking all 3, and they may not want to be linked. You might want to have a separate thing, and then we talk about that, and then there's another point, and we talk about that, and then there's the third thing.
So you
And I
lazy.
even brought it down. No, I
When
did
you
it
got
on
lazy,
purpose.
okay. I thought they were pointing that way a little bit.
And if you are going to mark out somebody, again, you're not going to say, yes, do you have a question with that finger pointing? We're going to be very careful to say, and acknowledging the
Well,
gentleman in the front row.
There's 2 possibilities here. One is it's a positive, and another is a management. And we'll do that more with group dynamics.
Yes.
But how you do this makes a difference for this, and we'll always end on this.
Yeah. And the main point is we don't want to say, okay, do you have a question? Because that is off-putting to people. So
Right.
again, so using our space and our analog marking, and then we have, Al just mentioned contaminating a space. So how do you decontaminate that? And I might say, if I'm working with someone, let's say I brought someone up as a demonstration model, and we were talking about something, in fact, this happened to me in one presentation.
Don't go into it, man.
But the person had a negative reaction to one of the thoughts that they had. When I said, well, you know what, let's just leave that there, and you and I will move over here. Because that space was now contaminated for this person.
And for the whole night.
Right. And we'll just
That
stay
space
away
would
from
be
it.
contaminated unless you can do something. Okay, so if you had to come back to the spot, how would you decontaminate it once it's been contaminated? So here's the spot that's been contaminated, okay? Now,
Right.
after she's done her demonstration or whatever,
And I just wanted you to notice how valuable it was to be able to move from that space where the thing happened, and we stepped away from that, and now what we're gonna do is just move that thing right out the room.
right. So because she's limited in her space, and this was a teaching spot, she has to decontaminate it instead of ignore it. It can be done either way. But by saying, we're just, we're gonna let go of that, that's done, right? So now she can step back into it.
It's like
and
erasing the
and it's
chalkboard.
clean. But the group has seen her decontaminate it.
Yes, so it's important to do that, and sometimes you do it, that was very overtly done, sometimes you'll do it more covertly. We just want the group to be aware of this new space.
They have to get it either consciously or unconsciously.
Right, and we'll be referring to these things again throughout the group dynamic work
Right.
as well. And then time references. So as we're facing you, obviously, we did our eye accessing, and when I talk about my visual access is to my left,
Visual recall.
and my visual recall is to my right. I'm
You-
sorry,
you-
I just said it backwards. My visual memory is to my left, my visual create is to my right. As I'm looking at our audience, if I do that, my way for you is like coming up to shake someone's hand and holding out the wrong hand. It doesn't feel comfortable. And we also, as presenters, we want to be in service of our audience. So what we recommend is knowing that for most people, as we're facing you, your past will be there, your present, we're congruent here, and then your future would be there.
See, where our present would be, if we gestured to where we commonly would expect the future, it would be your past. So we say, okay, 3 weeks ago would be comfortable for you, but if I said 3 weeks ago, there'll be
There's just a little glitch inside.
people won't even know why until we talk about it or tell them about it. Then they get it. They won't get it consciously, but they'll feel it.
Yeah, because it requires, because it's
Have to translate
against the
it.
natural way your brain receives things, there's a translation that has to happen
Right.
on the inside. So we want to have people pay attention to our content. We want them to get the message as easily as possible.
So what I'm gonna challenge Marilyn. You do if you want, but I'm gonna have you do an orientation with past, present, future, with the group's orientation,
Okay,
and
include something for myself.
include something for yourself.
Okay.
I'm just gonna move out of your way a little bit.
All right, so so glad that you're here today to talk about the other mind's eye and the concept of how we shift from one hemisphere to the other. So what I noticed was when people look up into this side for you, that's going to be where you remember things, right? If you're looking straight ahead, that's sort of just our visual access of in the immediate moment. And when you look up into your right, that for you is going to be your creative space, right? And because if I were to turn around, I would be with you, this would be my past, this would be my future, and here's our present for both of us. So if I hold my hand up for past and I turn around, then when you're looking at me, if I'm talking about my past, yesterday we had some fun doing some things, today we worked really hard to get ready to present, and tomorrow we have other things that we're going to be doing. That's for me. So that's showing you both ways.
So when she is talking about, or it's obvious that it's about her and her orientation, she will do it how it's natural for her. When she's talking about generalities, or for the group specifically, she will use the group's orientation.
And I notice that if I'm using, for the group, I'm going to be gesturing more towards my group. For myself, I will do more definitely to my side, more definitely to my other side, and then of course, my forward. Because it lets it be almost more of a one point. Oh, this is about my life in the past. This is about my future that I'm planning, and this is about what we're doing. So that's another, again, it's very subtle. Most people won't notice it, but they will notice it internally.
Yeah, they won't. They have to translate it, and anytime they have to translate it internally to fix it somehow, they've lost a few words at least.
Yeah. So you do have a couple of exercises through this module. We want to demonstrate one of the ones at the end where Al's going to do it with the requirement said. We want you to do a topic in one location and then keep contact with your audience and move to a second location with a second topic. That'll be part one, and then we'll come back and start over. The second time you'll do one topic facing your audience, you'll do the 1 point, and then move to the new location, connect with your group with the second topic.
Okay.
Could you
Can they
demonstrate
be
that?
related a little bit?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Why don't you start over here a little bit and then you have some space.
Okay, so you're gonna go this direction?
Yeah,
All right. Then you have to move.
I'm moving off camera.
Oh, we don't, no. Stay back a little bit. All right, so, topic, move,
Yeah.
and new topic, okay? I'm gonna join them, connect, or,
No, first one is like number one,
and then.
topic, take them with you while you go to the second topic.
Oh, okay, so.
Stop,
All right,
reset, and then second time topic.
give me one at a time,
Yeah, first one.
okay,
Topic, join them following you to
Okay.
the second topic.
all right. So, our team has done amazingly this year. We've really had a lot of success. And what we want to do is make sure that we're going to continue that success now and into the future. Okay?
Excellent.
All right, so, all right. I'm compelled to, okay, all right. I'll even use basically the same concept of words, so, okay. Our team has had amazing success this year. We've really done a good job. We can do even better. And I'm here to demonstrate how we can do that, right?
Good. Okay, so that's part, just for something simple like that, not complicated. And then one of the other exercises was to demonstrate the 1, 2, and 3, and 4 points inside a little presentation.
Okay?
And also put that in video. All right, so you want me to do that one? What we're going to do is I will give a little presentation. I will try to incorporate those things. Al will stop along the way and say, up, and I'm just going to freeze frame as if it's like film noir, yeah? We'll see how we can do that. All right,
Okay.
so.
So what I will be doing then is identifying the pattern. So see if you can see it as quickly as I notice it.
Yeah.
Maybe even quicker.
So I'm really glad to be here today, and our topic is going to be about how you use your visual memory. That's one of my highlights, because for me that was something I wasn't using effectively, and I enjoy having that. So as we do that,
Okay, that's a 1 point, because she finished statement, she's coming internal, so she's looking, her chin is down just slightly as she's moving. So she's moving, and she's going to take the breath, and she's going to come back, okay?
so I'd like you and I to think about how
That's
good
the
you
2
are
point. You
at
notice-
your.
Time. That's the 2 point, because she's looking at the group, and she's making a gesture of connection. That's a 2 point.
As you're looking into your own database and think about how you remember things well, like say remembering someone's name. A lot of times people go, oh, I'm terrible at that. So we want to find out how you're doing that, and one of the things I'd like to have you look at is my
Okay.
flip chart here.
Yeah, she's done the hand-eye coordination, and she's gone 3 point, because she's moved from a 2 point, and she's making a gesture. She's wanting you to look at something else that is in the room. So that's the 3 point. Okay?
And as you read your notes and so on, I want you to be able to come back to this time and again and see, this is the way that we can do that. So I appreciate that. Now, if in the past you've had difficulty with remembering names, let's just set that aside.
Okay, there's the 4 point, because she's using a time reference. The only time that actually exists is now. So technically, in the past, she sets it outside and refers to it outside. So anything through time or anything that's not in the room becomes a 4 point. Okay?
So we can remember that that happened, and we can let it stay back there, because we want to free your mind up now to be able to open up to the possibilities of having a really good visual memory and to remember people's names.
Now, although the gestures aren't this, she's still 2 point in the eyes. She's eye to eye.
Right. So thank you for listening.
Good job.
All right, so just little short vignettes like that. Use a topic that you're interested in, and get comfortable with these little gestures. We'll give it to you in small chunks, and then pretty soon you'll see how these things roll together. So
And you can see how important it is to have a topic or a subject that you're very familiar with, so that you don't have to think about what you're saying as much as you can focus on what is the technique and how does it feel with something you're already familiar and
Yeah.
good at.
And obviously, like any of our skills, this is sort of training wheels. It might be a little bit awkward at first, and yet you'll get more and more comfortable as you play with it and practice.
Right. And even in all fairness, with Marilyn and I standing up here, it's not as smooth as we could do it. I think just
And we're
in
doing it naturally.
just doing it, like
Yeah.
probably if you were to pull up a presentation we did, 4 modules ago, you'll probably see a lot of these techniques, and hopefully they'd be a lot smoother.
Right. And I know we both feel a little bit restricted because we have such a narrow field of focus in order for you to see us and be able to see the flip charts.
See,
or
once
the,
again,
the PowerPoint, yes. So hope you enjoy this module, have fun with it, and know that we're building to bigger things for your future.
yeah, and I want to point out too that it's really important that you are kind to yourself when you do the visual, the exercises where you have the replay and you're, for lack of a better term, you're
Feedback.
critiquing,
Yeah.
you're feedbacking what you've done. Be really kind to yourself because it's a learning experience.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thanks.